When things went south with my parents, I found myself with nowhere to go. The tension in our house had become unbearable, and one night, it boiled over. The shouting, the accusations, the tears, they all drove me out the door. I didn't even pack a bag, I just grabbed my phone and left. I crashed on my friends' couches for a while, but I knew I couldn't impose on them forever. I needed my own space, a place where I could breathe and think without the weight of my family's chaos bearing down on me. As the days turned into weeks, my luck ran out quickly. I searched through countless roommate and apartment apps, desperate for something affordable. My heart sank every time I clicked on a listing, only to be met with high prices and cramped spaces. Just when I was about to give up hope, I stumbled upon a listing that caught my eye. A guy named Luke had a room for rent in his one-story, three-bedroom house. The rent was $1,200 a month, a decent price for the area, and it seemed like it could be a perfect fit. Luke's description said he'd be living there too, but would be gone most of the time, meaning I'd usually have the house to myself. That was a relief. I had always been more of an introvert, and the thought of sharing a space with someone didn't sit well with me. He laid down a few strict rules: no parties, no large gatherings, no drinking in the living room, and absolutely no going into the basement. I thought that was fair enough. I arranged to meet Luke and see the place in person. When he opened the door, he gave off a strange vibe, quiet, a bit awkward. He seemed nervous as he showed me around, stumbling over his words. He was average height with a scruffy beard, wearing a faded band t-shirt and old jeans. The room I'd be renting was a good size, and the house had an open layout with the kitchen, living room, and dining area all connected. The walls were painted a pale yellow, which made the space feel warm and welcoming. Honestly, for $1,200 a month, it felt like a steal. He went over the rules again in person and emphasized not going into the basement or attic, saying he used those for storage. Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it off as nervousness. I told him I was interested, and 2 days later, I moved in. We didn't sign any formal lease, I'd just pay him month to month off the books. The room was already furnished with a bed, a dresser, and even some artwork on the walls, so it didn't take long to settle in. The bedroom had a lock, and Luke gave me a key, which seemed thoughtful at first. At first, living with Luke was okay. He mostly kept to himself, often disappearing for days at a time. It was almost like living alone, which suited me just fine. I went about my routine, getting used to my new life. I spent my evenings binge-watching shows, scrolling through social media, and catching up on sleep I hadn't had for weeks. But slowly, things started to change. At first, I didn't think much of it when I noticed his car was almost always in the driveway when I got home. I assumed he just worked weird hours. But then the weird noises began. It started as small things, a door creaking in the middle of the night, or the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the house. At first, I convinced myself it was just the old house settling, but as the days passed, the noises grew more unsettling. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up needing to use the bathroom. As I tiptoed down the hall, I noticed the basement door was open. It was strange because I was sure Luke had locked it. A dim light flickered below, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and I heard loud banging sounds echoing from the depths of the basement. My heart raced as I stood at the top of the stairs, uncertainty washing over me. I took a hesitant step forward, peering down into the darkness. Just then, Luke appeared at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at me. His expression was unreadable, annoyed, almost angry. I stumbled over my words. "I'm just going to the bathroom." He cut me off, his voice sharp. "Shut the basement door. The authority in his tone sent chills down my spine. I hurried back to my room, trying to shake off the feeling of dread creeping in. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, replaying the moment in my head. What was he doing down there? What could possibly require such secrecy? The questions gnawed at me like rats in the walls. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just my overactive imagination. But deep down, I felt something was off. A week later, I returned home from work and noticed my bedroom door was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it before leaving. I stepped inside, scanning the room for anything out of place. At first glance, nothing seemed missing, but I could feel it a sense that something was wrong. My clothes in the dresser were no longer neatly stacked, and the closet door was slightly ajar, as if someone had rummaged through my things. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. That's when it hit me, Luke must have a spare key and had gone through my stuff. I felt completely violated, like an intruder had invaded my personal space. Anger bubbled within me, and I resolved to confront him. I knocked on his door, my heart pounding in my chest. No answer. I glanced at his car parked outside, wondering how he could be home, yet ignoring me. Frustrated, I went back to my room, trying to calm down. I paced the floor, my mind racing. How could he do this to me? Later, while I was trying to relax, I heard his bedroom door creak open. My heart jumped. This was my chance. I rushed out of my room, catching him before he could slip away. "Hey, did you go into my room?" I blurted out, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me with a blank expression and shook his head, denying it. "You're the only one with the key," he said, brushing me off. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was lying. As he left the house, I felt a mix of anger and fear bubble inside me. I decided I had to get out of there. That night, I sat in my room, scrolling through rental listings online. I couldn't stay here. I needed to find a new place. But in the back of my mind, I knew I had to confront him again. My resolve grew stronger. But first, I had to understand what was going on. The next morning, I was determined to take a look in the basement. I was fed up with feeling like a prisoner in my own home. This was the first time Luke hadn't been home while I was, so I felt brave enough to explore. I confirmed he was gone by checking the windows and then opened the basement door. As I descended the stairs, my heart raced. There was no light switch, so I used my phone's flashlight to guide my way down the creaky steps. At the bottom was an old tan carpet that didn't even fit the floor well. The main room was small and cramped, with an ugly couch sitting in the middle. A strange, funky smell filled the air, growing stronger near a door in the corner. My pulse quickened as I approached the door, curiosity getting the better of me. I tried the knob, but it was locked. The smell was awful, almost like raw sewage. I quickly scanned the room, hoping to find something that would explain the strange occurrences, but all I saw were taped-up cardboard boxes piled in the corner. I turned to leave, but caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow moving in the corner. Panic surged through me, and I bolted back upstairs, shutting the door behind me. I locked myself in my room, heart pounding as I tried to make sense of what I'd just seen. I stayed up the entire night, listening for any sounds coming from the basement, my mind racing with terrifying possibilities. What secrets was Luke hiding down there? I must have eventually fallen asleep because I woke up to a strange noise in the middle of the night. My alarm hadn't gone off, so something else had jolted me awake. I blinked my eyes open, disoriented, and there he was, Luke, standing right next to my bed, leaning over me, staring. My heart raced, and I struggled to find my voice. "What are you doing in here?" I croaked out, my throat dry. He shushed me, a finger pressed to his lips, and whispered, "Did you go into the basement?" I froze, my breath catching in my throat. "No, I didn't," I managed to say, feeling the cold sweat form on my forehead. "Are you sure?" he pressed, his voice low and chilling. I turned the question back on him, summoning my courage. "Did you come into my room when I wasn't home?" His expression didn't change, he simply denied it, but there was a flicker in his eyes that suggested he was hiding something. Then, without saying another word, he held up his hand, but it was too dark for me to see if he was holding anything. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I was paralyzed by fear. The silence in the room felt suffocating, thick with unspoken words and secrets. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the dark, my heart pounding in my ears. That was the last straw. I couldn't stay there any longer. Whatever secrets Luke was hiding, I didn't want to find out. The next morning, I packed my bags, shoving clothes and personal items into a suitcase with shaky hands. My mind raced with thoughts of the basement, of Luke's strange behavior, and of the fear that consumed me. As I loaded my things into my car, I glanced back at the house one last time, a sense of dread washing over me. I didn't know what I was leaving behind, but I felt certain it was more than just my belongings. It felt like I was escaping something dark and menacing. I drove away, the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders as I put distance between myself and that house. But as I settled into a new place, the feeling of being watched lingered. I couldn't shake the paranoia that had gripped me in Luke's home. I tried to move on, but the memories haunted me. I replayed every strange moment, every chilling encounter. Weeks passed, and I slowly began to rebuild my life. I met new friends, started new routines, but at night, I often found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. I couldn't stop thinking about the basement, the locked door, and the shadow I had seen out of the corner of my eye. I had escaped, but had I truly left the darkness behind? Then, one night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a notification. I groaned and picked it up, squinting at the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. The message simply read, "Did you go into the basement?" I dropped the phone, my heart racing as panic set in. How did he find me? I thought I had left that life behind. I paced the room, frantically trying to calm myself. Maybe it was just a prank, I told myself. Maybe it wasn't Luke. But deep down, I knew the truth. He was watching me. Days turned into nights, and I lived in fear, looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. I changed my number, but that didn't stop the messages. Each time my phone buzzed, dread coiled in my stomach. The messages became more sinister, each one taunting me with questions about the basement and my belongings. "Did you leave anything behind? I hope you're safe." Finally, after weeks of this torment, I decided to confront my fear. I reached out to my friends and told them everything. They were shocked, and after a long conversation, they convinced me to go to the police. I hesitated, worried they'd think I was overreacting, but I knew I had to do something. The fear of Luke tracking me down had taken over my life. The next day, I walked into the station, my hands shaking. I recounted my story, explaining the strange behavior and the messages I had been receiving. The officer listened carefully, his expression serious. After taking notes, he said, "We'll look into it. If he's contacting you, it's important to document everything." They took my phone, promising to trace the messages and see if they could track down Luke. I left the station feeling a mix of relief and fear. I had done something, but I knew the nightmare wasn't over. A few days later, I received a call from the police. They had found Luke's house abandoned and boarded up. There were reports of strange noises and sightings from neighbors, but Luke had vanished without a trace. My stomach churned as they told me about the basement. When they finally pried the door open, what they found was more horrifying than I could have imagined. The officers discovered a room filled with old furniture, but it was the walls that shocked them. They were covered in photos of me, taken at different angles from different places. It was a twisted gallery of my life, capturing moments when I thought I was alone. My heart sank as they described the scene. I felt sick as I listened to the details. Luke had been watching me, stalking me from the shadows, and I had unwittingly lived in his lair. The police assured me I was safe, but the feeling of being hunted never fully left me. I had escaped the physical presence of Luke, but the psychological grip he had on me remained. I tried to move on, but the memory of those dark days haunted me. I kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for a glimpse of the man who had turned my life upside down. I began to isolate myself again, not wanting to risk another encounter. But deep down, I knew I couldn't live in fear forever. Months passed, and I slowly rebuilt my life, moving to a new city and starting fresh. But there was always a part of me that felt broken, a part that would never forget the terror I had faced. I was determined not to let Luke define my future. I learned to embrace the light, even if the shadows still lingered at the edges of my mind. And then, one quiet evening, as I sat in my new apartment, I received a notification from an app I had downloaded. It was a message from a new roommate app, suggesting matches based on my profile. My heart raced as I scrolled through the potential matches, and then I froze. There was a name that sent chills down my spine, Luke. The app suggested him as a compatible roommate. I felt a rush of panic. How could this be happening? I quickly closed the app, my breath coming in short gasps. Had he tracked me down again? Was he lurking in the shadows, waiting for another chance to invade my life? The memories flooded back, each one more horrifying than the last. I felt trapped in my own mind, haunted by the specter of the man I had tried so hard to escape. But I knew I wouldn't let fear control me again. I picked up my phone and dialed my friend, my voice trembling as I recounted what had just happened. "I can't do this again," I told them, my heart racing. I thought I was safe. My friend listened patiently and then said, "You are safe. Just remember what you've learned. You're stronger than you think." Her words gave me strength, and I resolved to take action. I reported the message to the app, explaining my history and the threats I had faced. I refused to be a victim again. And as I hung up the phone, I realized I had the power to take back control of my life. Luke might have haunted my past, but he wouldn't determine my future. I could face the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. That night, I sat in my room, a newfound determination filling my chest. I would not live in fear. I would not let the shadows consume me. I would embrace the light and reclaim my life, leaving the past behind. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had faced my demons, and I was ready to move forward. Whatever secrets Luke held, whatever darkness lurked in the shadows, I knew I was no longer afraid. I had survived, and that was enough.